Hello friends and welcome to Knowledge by Nature. In today's video we are going to be taking a look at the elementary series of A Life of Fred. If you have seen very many of my videos, you probably know that we do Dimensions Math with Singapore Math. I love that program. I don't foresee getting rid of it, but if you have been homeschooling for any amount of time at all, you know sometimes you need a little bit of change when it comes to curriculum from time to time. It occurred to me last week as we had started using apples again that this isn't something I had ever talked about on my channel really, and I wanted to give you guys a review, take you inside of it, show you what it's about so that if it's something that might be good or interesting for your family, maybe this video would be very helpful. Before we get started, I am a homeschool mom to a first grader, and we love read alouds and we love hands-on activities, and the read aloud option is really whatever got me interested into the Life of Fred because of how much we enjoy reading aloud, and because she is somewhat of an auditory learner as well as a hands-on kinesthetic learner. I thought that the Life of Fred could be something that was good for us. I had purchased these 3 books for our kindergarten year, and like I said, we're on first grade and we are just now kind of getting back into apples. So let's go through this. Before we dive in, if you haven't subscribed already, please hit that subscribe button for me, and if you like this type of video, please give me a thumbs up. Let's get started. Alright, this is considered the Life of Fred Elementary series. I am actually missing one book for this to be a complete set for grades 1 through 4. And so we would have A, B, C, and then we would need D, dogs. I actually have went ahead and purchased D because that way I have this entire series. When I go to read about it, it says that this is recommended for grades 1 through 4. Like I said at the beginning, this apples is something that we had in our morning basket for all of kindergarten. It was something that we kind of liked, but it wasn't ever a full curriculum for us. It was just something that we would sit and read occasionally. It kind of got to the point where it just wasn't quite what we were needing for kindergarten, and so I went ahead and put it away. And then just about a month into our first grade year, she asked me about apples again. And I went ahead and pulled this back out, and this is something she's really been enjoying and has been asking me to do every day. And so we are just about to finish up Life of Fred apples right now. And just so you know, these are pretty affordable for a math curriculum. If you were to get all 4, which would be apples, butterflies, cats, and dogs, if you were to get all 4 of those, currently as of October 2020, they're $61.50 on Rainbow Sources. These have an incredibly good resale value. It is quite possible, if you are able to sell them on the right platform, that you will get every penny back that you spent. So if you go to look at these used, don't be shocked if you're seeing them used for, $50 for the set or $60 for the set or even more. Currently, I was kind of looking at some of the used ones, and they're running about $12 to $14 per book. So that just kind of gives you an idea. Again, this is just, prices change all of the time, but even when I purchased these back for kindergarten, I paid over $10 a book. So that just gives you an idea. This was well before we had the pandemic and there wasn't the surge of homeschooling that we have. So this is a different curriculum. A lot of people say this is not a full curriculum for this age, and that's just something that you will have to decide for yourself. It depends on what your student is like. How does your student learn? How do they take information? And so that's just some things that you would need to think about. Just a quick note, you don't write in these books, and so that helps with the sell value of you don't write in them. You have your own separate notebook that you do. some of the answers in, and it's not a drill and kill. There's not a bunch of worksheets. So let's get into these. Like I said, I am missing one for this section of the elementary series. And so there's a section that's A through D, which is apples, butterflies, cats, and dogs. And I'll put a picture of that right here so you know what I'm talking about. And on Rainbow Resources, it lists that that is for grades 1 through 4. Then there is another set that you can get either E through J. I'll put that here. And then I also saw an E through H, and those are listed as grades 2 through 5. So first, you're going to start with apples. I did read that it is recommended no matter what your grade level is, start with apples, because this is going to build the story for your student and they'll just fly through it quicker. So if you have a third grader or a second grader or even more and you're interested in this, I would start with apples just so that you are building the story. The child is getting a connection with Fred, and I think that's very important for the actual series. Now let's look here at apples, which is the first book in the life of Fred. You will see on this cover here that there's somewhat of some strange drawings. I think that appeals to the younger students. For the parents, it's strange from time to time. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of goofy, but again, that's why she loves this so much, I think. Another thing is you're going to be learning much more than just math here. You may see right here we have Archimedes. And so there is some artwork in there showing who he is, what he taught about. You learn about deciduous trees, evergreen trees. You're learning some clock. There's just a lot of stuff. So let's go ahead and get in here and let's look at it. So at the beginning, we have the life of Fred. Little introduction here, kind of talks about before we begin. Kind of tells about how things are normally taught. As far as normally it's, you're going to do these worksheets, you're going to circle this, you're going to underline that, you're going to drill and kill. And so how this book is organized, each chapter is about 6 pages. At the end of each chapter is your turn to play, and you read it, and then the student writes down, not just orally. He says that if they only do it orally, they're kind of cheating the system a little bit. They're not quite getting as much as they could. And so he definitely recommends that you do get your pen and pencil out. But again, guys, it's really short. So even someone that doesn't like to write a lot, there's just a few questions each time. This book doesn't say how many chapters to do, but Butterflies actually does recommend how often, and it says do a chapter a day. So depending on what your age group is, it is recommended that you're going to be doing a chapter a day. Now, if you want to start and introduce this in kindergarten, I wouldn't recommend a chapter a day. It certainly didn't work for us, and it may not work for you. But as a first grader, a chapter a day is no problem. Here are the contents. So it's showing you for chapter 1, we are learning about 5 o'clock. We're going to be introduced to Fred and, of course, Fred's doll, Kingy, and we're going to be doing addition. And as you can see, we'll just kind of scroll up here on each one. We're just learning different things. Chapter 6, we're introduced to Archimedes right there. Over on chapter 7, you can see what we're covering there. Chapter 8, 9, 10. Chapter 10, I don't know if you can tell there, but we're talking about herbivores and carnivores. So see, there's just so many things that we're talking about. I believe it was up here on chapter 9 maybe, or it could have been chapter 10, that we are talking about the Titanic also. And so there's many different things that you're covering. Chapter 12, then the next page is chapter 13, chapter 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and then we have the index in the back. So you have 18 chapters in apples. Now when you think about it, that's going to give you only 18 days. And so if you're looking at this as a full curriculum, do realize you're going to fly through one book rather quickly. But you don't have to do a chapter each day if you didn't want to. So chapter 1, you're going to be introduced to Fred. right off the bat, we're looking at the clock, and so we automatically start learning about the clock. We're learning about months of the year, things that we can expect through February and different months of the year. We're introduced to Kingi. And so if you haven't heard of this before, Fred is a 5-year-old professor at Kittens University, and he owns this doll, Kingi. And so again, like I said, it's silly. The drawings are kind of silly. And then here I would recommend if you were to do this, maybe get out the 7 pencils, talk about them as you're doing the 5 plus 2 equals 7, so that your child can maybe get some hands-on learning as well. And then we go through here, and then it's your turn to play. And so at the end of each chapter, you have a your turn to play. There's not very many questions, usually like 3 to 6 maybe. And so there's the questions here. You'll ask the questions, the child will get their own paper, and then you guys will work on it together. If they're old enough to write it. If they're not quite old enough to write everything yet, then you could write it for them and maybe have them write the answer or something like that. The answers are on the back of the page, and so you can turn and immediately get the answers. So if you have an older student that could possibly want to look at the answers early, you might want to clip your pages together so that it couldn't easily be turned, because the answers are right there on the next. And so then we just go to chapter 2, and this is the format that it's going to follow every time. You have the black and white drawings, and then you have your turn to play over here. Here, we're introduced to some art that Kingi drew, and then just different prompts that you might could do throughout. We have your answers on the back, and then we come to chapter 3. And so this is just a really, really interesting curriculum. Again, it's up to you whether this is enough. For us personally, it is a supplemental program. It is not something that I only use. We do use Dimensions Math. That is our primary math. However, when sometimes you just need a break, even if it's always worked good for you, sometimes you just need a change of scenery, and that is what Fred is doing for us right now. And I feel like I could make this more detailed too. If I wanted to simply use this, I could just build on the questions that are provided at the end, provide more manipulatives, provide more practice for it. So I think you could easily make this a more detailed program and cover it. In here, I know that you're working by 5s. Here we are right here. They're learning to count by 5s. So you could definitely break this up, have the same chapter, but work on counting by 5s more than once that week. So you can build upon this to make it more than what it is. So that's just a suggestion. If you're interested in it, but you're afraid it might not be enough for you, try to think of some ideas where you could make it enough for you, especially in these younger years. However, I believe this was originally made for older students, and then they added the elementary series later. So again, here's some more of the funny drawings that we're going to see throughout this chapter. She really seems to like this, and so we just currently we are doing a chapter a day, and she is enjoying that very much. And like I said, we are just about to finish apples, and then you will go into butterflies. So let's look at butterflies to see what it has to offer. All right, so as we get into butterflies here, you get another note here where he talks about how this book began, what the thought process was, and this is where it's telling us that each chapter is about 6 pages and do a chapter a day. At the end of each chapter is your turn to play. So have your paper and pencil handy before you sit down to read. And this, he says, it consists of about 4 or 5 questions. Have your child write out the answers. So again, it says right here, don't just let your child read the questions, look at the answers. Your child won't learn as much taking that shortcut. So he has that recommendation there. Let's look at what we're going to be covering for butterflies. So we have chapter 1. We can see we're doing some addition. We're doing 1 yard equals 3 feet. We're doing some clock. Let's go down. We're looking at some degrees for chapter 2. Looks like we're looking at some bugs for chapter 3. Putting Kingy to bed. I see some subtraction there. We're looking at 5:25 on the clock, so we're not looking at just the hours anymore. Food of half a pound equals 8 ounces. Then chapter 6, we're looking at Orion's belt, triangles. Let's go over here to chapter 7. Chapter 7, we're looking at 5 minutes to 6. So you can see we're really getting further into our clockwork. Chapter 8, looks like we've got some money that we're being introduced to here. Chapter 9, some more subtraction, some more interesting clockwork. Look at this one, translating from German to English. Okay, interesting. Chapter 10, Orion, light years, 1,000, million, billion, trillion. Chapter 11, the bell tower. Chapter 12, talking with Ned. So we're looking at AM, PM, and 8 5-pound watermelons, sentences with dozens of words in them. And then we come over here, we've got chapter 13. We're talking about if tomorrow is Wednesday, what day was yesterday. So we're still working with days of the week, it appears. Chapter 14, chapter 15, chapter 16, Alice in Wonderland, Moby Dick, Don Quixote. Chapter 17, Donald Duck. Chapter 18, History of Pizza. Chapter 19, The Mysteries of Life. That is all for the butterflies. So we have 19 chapters for the butterflies. So let's take a look at what chapter 1 is looking like here. We have, looks like Kingy the doll is trying to paint something. We're looking at some butterflies here. We're just kind of looking here. Looks like we are looking at 1 yard here. And then sometimes there are notes for the parents, and most of the time that is down into smaller letters like that. And then we come over here, and it's your turn to play, just like it was set up last time. So for this one, it would be what is 5 plus 4 equals, 4 plus 5 equals, what time is it? Then we've got Fred is 1 yard tall. How many feet is that? If you have forgotten, it is okay to look back 2 pages to find the answer. So that's good. It's encouraging them to look back, find their answers if they don't know what it is. How many members does this set 1 through 6 have? This was in Life of Fred Apples, 5 plus 2. And so it looks like maybe the very beginning here is a slight introduction. And then again, the back of the page, we have answers. Then you start on chapter 2 again. So it just follows along exactly like the last one. We're getting the same silly pictures of Fred. We're getting different ideas of the way that we can approach math. So it doesn't have to be all worksheets. And even though we started out this year and she was like really wanting to do all these worksheets, now that we're further into it, she's tiring of the worksheets already. And so this is where Fred is allowing a really good break from the regular process of having so many worksheets. So I'll just kind of flip through just a little bit more so you can see what that looks like. Just a little bit here. And so there we go, 4 butterflies. Now the last one I have to show you is cats, and it's a nice purple color. And so here on the front we can see that we've still got our silly Life of Fred drawings. So this is Life of Fred cats. A note before we begin, it's just a little bit different. It is saying a chapter each day will be something to look forward to. So it's suggesting that you do a chapter a day, but again, you go at your own speed. You know what is best for your child. I said in this book, your kids and you see broad vistas. So we've got astronomy, human relations, physiology, music, geography, English, and oil painting. So that's what's so interesting about this, is they're not just getting one thing. Let's look at the contents of cats. Chapter 1, The Big Dipper. Chapter 2, Talking with Sam. It looks like we're a quarter. We're going to be working with a quarter there. Chapter 3, open 24 hours, counting by fives, twos, threes. Chapter 4, hoodwinked, deciduous and evergreen. Chapter 5, found. And even though we continue to repeat some of these, I don't know if it's the same with your family, but repetition is a good thing most of the time. Chapter 6, alone with the cat. So we're looking at vertical addition here. We're changing up the way that we're seeing addition. Chapter 7, King Geese Fort, counting by tens to 100. Chapter 8, the Pacific, what that means, germs and infection. Chapter 9, when in doubt, read. So avoiding bites, scratches, rabies, writing complete English sentences. Chapter 10, at the doctor. Chapter 11, saying goodbye. So we're looking at vowels here. 22 words that don't contain a vowel. Chapter 12, place value. So we're looking at ones, tens, hundreds, the decimal, thousands, millions. Let me turn over here. We're looking at chapter 13, numbers that add to 13, the Morse code, 4 major oceans of the world. So this is where I'm saying that you could definitely break this chapter out and make it much more detailed if you wanted to do more further studies on these things. Chapter 14, sense, prepositions. Chapter 15, to the dictionary, the metric system. Chapter 16, measuring. Chapter 17, rectangles. 18, getting dressed. 19, on the way to class. So we've got, looky here, look at this. So greater than, less than, we're going to be looking at. So this is just interesting. This is a very interesting curriculum. I do really enjoy how much is put into it. It's not just math. And again, if you are an auditory learner, if you are a family that really enjoys read alouds, things like that, I would highly recommend this. And again, it holds its value, which is so awesome for being able to resell your curriculum to help support you in getting your next year's curriculum. Even if you're not going to use this as solely math program, this is a fun thing to add to the classroom. Again, it didn't work great for us in kindergarten. It wasn't that it didn't work. It just wasn't quite the fit that it is now. Is this something that I feel like will carry on past dogs? I don't know. It's possible. I know that some people use this all the way through high school. So it's a very, very interesting curriculum. And I don't doubt that if you begin to love it as an elementary student, that you might continue to want it as you go, because it is a fun way of learning math. I think math is a very important thing, and I want to make sure that it is something that is fun, which is why I'm willing to introduce a little bit of a different curriculum versus just our normal dimensions. So I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, please leave it down in the comments below. Again, this is the Life of Fred Elementary Series. This is for grades 1 through 4. And if you wanted the whole set for 1 through 4, you would want apples, butterflies, cats, and dogs. That would complete it all. Your next step would be grades 2 through 5, where you're going to be getting E through J. So again, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, please click that for me. Give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye, friends.